Hello, and welcome to Full Tech Ahead. I'm Amanda Razani, and I'm excited to be here today with Jason Valdina. He is the Senior Director of Engagement Channel Strategy at Verint. How are you doing today, Jason?
Hey, Amanda. Thanks for having me.
Happy to have you on the show. Can you share a little bit about what does Verint do?
Absolutely. So Verint is a CX automation platform. So we're a global software company. We run a CCaaS platform, and really our specialty is CX automation. This is really automating the interactions that customers have with businesses, as well as the automating sort of more of the workflows that employees will do and perform typically to support those customers. So outward facing automation as well as workforce automation.
Okay, and we're here today to talk about AI-powered bots, specifically in the travel industry today. You have some news to share in that area. So, first of all, tell me about AI-powered bots. We hear a lot about them these days. How so are y'all using them? What are some of your solutions?
Yeah, I think like even the notion of AI powered is starting to become almost like, I don't want to call it table stakes, but I think it's just assumed now that things are infused with AI. And I don't have to tell you, this has been quite, AI has had quite a moment over the past 3 years or so. But yeah, I think because it affects the travel agency. I think the thing that's most interesting is places where there's a lot of think about the legacy of the travel industry. There's a lot of legacy systems, and that's also been in the news quite a bit, at least in the US, over the past couple of months, of these legacy systems that are falling apart and failing and need updates. Complicated industries, I would say travel, finance, healthcare, they're not all at the same level of sexiness. Travel is the most interesting. It's the one we all aspire to be involved in, but they all suffer from huge complexity. There's a lot of different systems. There's a lot of things going on. There's a lot of processes and things that have to be followed a certain way. And I think it's interesting to see the role of AI in that sector, in all those sectors, actually, because of the way that things can be stitched together. And these things can be somewhat automated to a degree where people are doing the things people are supposed to do. And there's a lot of things that people shouldn't have to do. As humans, we shouldn't have to be doing all these complicated checks and balances and following all these different steps. If it's that rote, let a bot do that. So I think that's the approach that Verint has taken in terms of the idea of customer experience automation, and CX automation is really about just applying AI where it frees people up to do the things they do best. And in the travel industry, that is making sure people are having a good time, that they get to where they're going without any strife and frustration and stress. And that, it leaves a lasting impression that's good and people want to do business with you again. So we have a lot of airlines, a lot of hotel chains, a number of rental car companies, train lines. I mean, it's a big sector for us. And I think 2 years ago or so, we kind of zoomed out and said, wow, we really have across the board, when you look at travel as a broader sector, we've really attracted a huge swath of that industry because they were all trying to figure out, how do I get my staff focused on customer experience and take all the noise out of there? And I think AI has had a big moment in the travel industry.
Yeah, absolutely. Fun fact about me, I'm also a travel agent. So I love hearing about how technology is being used in the travel industry.
That's awesome.
And I know you have some stats that you can share about how AI bots are helping with call centers for Volaris. They came out with some information
Yeah.
there. Can you share about that? Because I know call centers can be very stressful environments. So anything to help there is great.
Well, so Volaris Airlines, they are now the largest Mexican airline. So they're bigger than Aeromexico. When we first started with them about 7 years ago, Aeromexico was the top airline. And Volaris attributes their dominance in that market, and now really Latin America, really, I would say the Americas, if we could expand it so big. They've attributed a lot of their success to a couple of things. One, going fiercely digital, really embracing the channels that they knew their customer base wanted most. It's just things like messaging channels, WhatsApp, SMS, Facebook Messenger. That's where their customers expect to be. That's the most convenient thing for them. Going on the website all the time, yeah, maybe that's when they're definitely not calling. They don't want to email. So that was the first thing they did. But they've gotten to a point now where they've reduced their cost footprint by 70% by really scaling up on digital channels. And I kind of hate saying AI powered, and I hate saying digital, but it does differentiate it from phone. And having to have agents single threaded through one phone call at a time, kind of great if you're a travel agent because you really need to walk through an itinerary, and that's a great place for voice. At scale as an airline, with all people trying to check into a flight or change their itinerary or a flight's delayed, you cannot scale, especially in bad times and when things are going wrong. You can't scale with the voice channel. So they've really all but hidden their voice options. It's very hard to call Volaris. They can call you, so they'll make outbound calls, but they've really tried to get people into channels where they can automate the conversation. They can have kind of the proverbial chatbot automate a lot of the common tasks. And when I say common tasks, I'm not saying things like, what time zone is Guadalajara on, which is a question I actually asked last year. The tasks they're trying to automate are things as, kind of the beginning of our conversation, I was saying the travel agencies, the travel industry is really complicated because of all these different systems. I think one of the things that Volaris have attributed to basically reducing their cost by 70%, which is massive. Cost per interaction, the cost to serve Amanda as a traveler has been reduced by 70%. And a lot of that is they took all their existing systems and wired them together so that chatbots on a channel like WhatsApp or even over SMS or Messenger or web chat, they also have chat on their website. These text modalities have been wired up so that AI can execute tasks like changing a flight, upgrading your seat, checking into a flight, getting your boarding pass. These are things that we sort of take for granted in, especially in North America, you go into a modern airport, all that stuff. But the systems behind doing all that for like a Delta or American Airlines, some of the British Airways, big airlines, we take it for granted. Some of the smaller low-cost carriers, this is an expensive endeavor to put in place. But I think Volaris is really interesting because they did it over the course of several years. They've gotten to the point where they've digitized the entire travel experience. So the things that you really need to reach out to them for are, I think the stat for them is not only have they reduced their cost by 70%, part of the reason that they've been able to do that is the automation they've built that faces you and I as a traveler. I think it's 85% containment rate, which means 85% of conversations that they have with customers are fully automated. And it sounds like they're just given the stiff hand and they don't want to talk to people. It's actually the other way around. You think about it being, this is my phone. I was going to try and animate this, but wedging the phone between your shoulder and try to walk with your family through the airport. It's not a place where you want to be on hold. It's not a place where you can get into detail. You need to be sort of, as I like to say, asynchronous. Tap, 5 minutes go by, do something again, put your bag on, do something again. It needs to be at your pace. So they've reduced that cost by 70% by having only about 14 or 15% of those conversations on all those channels escalating to a human being. So that's huge. And this is during a time where, as they've grown as an airline, I think their volume into the contact center has increased by 380%. So in that time, to still be able to contain all those conversations and it's meant that they only really had to increase the size of their staff by about 9%, they said. So they didn't have to go out and hire a bunch more people as their growth trajectory went up like this. Their team size went up like that. And I think it's a good story too, because there's a lot of, I don't know if you hear this, Amanda, but I feel like there's a lot of buzz about AI replacing people and, people losing their jobs. I don't know. Do you hear?
Oh, yeah.
You probably see stuff like that, right? Yeah, I find that they're an interesting story as well, because Volaris, they haven't let anybody go. In fact, quite the contrary. But they did quickly point out that we've had to hire a lot less than we thought. So 9% instead of, compared to 380% volume, it wasn't a 380% increase in staff. So that's just huge. It's absolutely huge.
Absolutely.
It's exciting.
And especially anytime they can eliminate stress in the travel world, especially when it comes to airlines. We already know how much more stressful it is to fly.
Yeah.
So, as you were mentioning, anything that makes that easier is great.
Right.
So, you also work with some other industries within travel, like the New York Transit. Can you share some of the other use cases and their journeys?
Yeah, I think there's the train sector is something that is interesting to see kind of get modernized. Like I live in New York City. Yeah, we do work with the New York City Transit Authority. They use us for social media. So really social media, but not for I mean they do this with us, but it's not so much like publishing social posts. It's more about answering traveler questions. The most common thing is like, when's my train coming to the 23rd Street station? So these people are standing there for 3 or 4 minutes. They want to know when that's happening. There are signs that have been digitized, but the interesting stuff is that is the system. There's a system that they built to like monitor the tracks themselves and know when the 3 train is 2 stops away, so they could say it's 2 minutes away. So connecting to systems like that has been really interesting, and allowing agents to feed that data and be able to push that out there. But they're really using us for social media. A lot of people go on social media, public social media. I'm talking about X/Twitter, public, Instagram, public. When I mean public, not messaging, not a one-to-one thing. So yeah, the MTA has used us for responding to public posts. If there's an outage and people are starting to ask questions or complain about that, they will start at, hey, here's the information that you all need. Trying to monitor that stuff, but also bringing those conversations into a messaging conversation, a one-to-one private discussion, kind of to reduce the flame game and the shame game of public social media posting. So New York is a big city. We're a very opinionated group over here. And some people will, jump on social media and be like, oh, the subway system's the worst. It's actually awesome, but yeah, things happen. So they use this to try and keep people up to, just in the loop and up to date and have a way to access more information. We work with Amtrak as well. And Amtrak is not all that different. The one interesting thing that I would say about both Volaris Airlines and Amtrak is their great stories of customer service teams becoming revenue generators. What I mean by that is like for Volaris, their head, it's basically their CMO, who's our main client there. Looks after everything from the contact center to outbound marketing and everything in between. And they've gotten to a point where he said that across all the expenditure across Verint and a couple of the systems they have in place for the contact center, that they are generating enough revenue through agents and through bots for ancillary purchases, like upgrading your seat, buying an additional bag. Like they're a low cost carrier, so they're monetizing all that stuff. But those ancillary purchases that are now happening through a bot on WhatsApp or through talking to Amanda, the customer service agent, they're able to actually generate enough revenue where they actually have covered the cost of their contact center. They've zeroed it out, which is pretty intense. So they're not yet like making money, but as a business, they've said, all right, this department, which is pretty costly, are now covering our costs. So it's a net zero, which is incredible. Amtrak got on, pardon the dad pun. They got on the train about 3 years ago. They've had a bot for a long time, but 3 years ago, they upgraded it significantly using Verint's IVA, or Interactive Virtual Assistant Studio. And they did some work themselves. They worked with us just for consulting. And they basically added a whole purchase flow, which sounds like, yeah, sure. But you don't really see that much as I thought we would by now. I don't see a lot of brands putting a full purchase flow in a chatbot. I don't know if you've seen that anywhere. It's out there, but it tends to be smaller, bespoke startups that have done something cool in that regard. But a big business like Amtrak to go the extra mile and say, all right, you can go to the chatbot on our website or in the app and chat your way through getting the itinerary, asking questions, making modifications, paying, and getting your ticket. That's cool. So they're doing that. And I forget what their stat is. I might mess this up. I think they've seen it's compared to compared to their website and calling in to, because you go to the website and buy stuff, buy tickets, you can call them and buy a ticket. But compared to the other methods of purchase for Amtrak tickets, the chatbot itself and the app bot generate 18% more revenue than the other ones. So just the fact that people are finding that more convenient, they've seen that generate. And I think there was some stat around the amount that people are spending, because the ease of upgrade is kind of a tap away. Like there's some element there of like they're actually spending a little more money there. So there's some interesting stuff that happens when you give people really good autonomy. It's not the stiff hand, I don't want to talk to you. It's let me make this easier because I know you don't want to talk to me about this.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that we've come a long way just in hearing you talk about these success stories and the return on investment. We've come a long way from those first bots because, there's some horror stories with the first bots being pretty annoying and not very helpful and people just screaming, agent, agent, agent. So these are much more reliable, you'd say, and effectively helping reduce the stress.
Yeah, and I think the evolution of the AI space itself helps a lot there. So where Verint has really continually invested is kind of staying up to date with all the large language models that are out there. We have some of our own. We work with Amazon, Google, Apple, working with, Meta's Wit.ai. There's a bunch of different platforms that we use depending on Lambda. Depending on the job at hand and what a customer is trying to do, some AI models are better than others. It might be because of, the way that they can be integrated with. It might be sort of key use cases or terminology or domain expertise that might already be built into one versus another. So there's reasons why we might mix these things. But we spend a considerable amount of energy every year keeping up to date with all this stuff and try and take the burden off our customers to have to do that homework and all that R&D. But I think what's really interesting is with the advent of Gen AI over the past also about 3 years as well, right? It's existed before that, but the OpenAI launch kind of blew the doors off, and now everybody talks about Gen AI. But I think the evolution of Gen AI into techniques like RAG and being able to actually make automation much more conversational than it used to be has helped a lot. So I think not giving brands that have those bad experiences a hall pass, like that always was a bad thing and it was always avoidable. Be like, I'm sorry, I didn't understand what you said. But there is some credence to the fact that, like, especially the audio stuff has gotten so much better. Where I see some really interesting occurrences is the ways in which evolution of AI models has allowed customers that are not super sophisticated in this area to take content that they rely on. So you think about like, I don't know, what's a business that you work with a lot as a travel agent in your other life? Like hotel chain or something.
Okay, let's throw one out. Marriott.
Yeah, huge business, multiple sub brands, right? They have different policies depending on the brand and all that stuff. So you think about all the FAQs and all the content they have about their policies and all their amenities and all this stuff. We work with IHG. It's like the hotel group that has remember all of their sub brands. There's a number of them. They're a Marriott competitor. But IHG, their bot is running on our platform as well. And they're a great example of a hotel chain that's actually gone out and said, we have all this content and it's so cumbersome to try and get that content into the bot. That's kind of how they were thinking about, like, how do I get it in the bot? And, we've come to the table with, look, we've built all these tools that just say, let the bot have access to that stuff. And let's put some guardrails around what it can and can't see and what it can and can't use. And use Gen AI and RAG to actually generate responses to common questions. You don't have to plan for those questions necessarily. You just need to know what content you want to be used to answer those questions. And so when you use that bot, you should give it a try. Go to IHG's site. You can even choose a sub brand. That bot is slick because you could say, I'm interested in your property in Las Vegas. Do they have a swimming pool? They're like, actually, there's a swimming pool on the main deck. There's also an indoor pool. Like, it actually answers questions like, almost like if you're using the ChatGPT app, if you've done that. Like it's that conversational, because under the hood, it is using Gen AI, like a chat GPT. And it's using RAG, which is effectively using generative models to generate conversation, but it's doing it on multiple sources. So it's pulling, I have an article over here that's relevant. There's a couple of sentences over here on the web page that's also relevant. I'm going to pull these various things in together and stack rank them based on relevancy, and I'm going to craft a response. It's a little more than just I'm going to summarize this one thing. So there's a lot more sophistication in terms of how it's able to respond. So but I also think that's raised the bar. I mean, you, me, like we're all now expecting, we're all kind of getting saturated too with like summaries of everything. So we kind of expect there to be a summary. Sometimes it's useful, sometimes it's not. But I do think that, back to your original question, yeah, I think overall, the state of AI has really improved the automated conversations we can have with business. Obviously, shamelessly, I would say, when you're working with a company like Verint, who's making that investment, and we have a whole team that is focused on R&D just in that space. So we're up, we're always up and on the bleeding edge. But it's really interesting to watch the space evolve and see what our customers are doing with our tech. It's very cool.
Yeah, it really is. Well, what's next on the horizon? Anything you're working on next?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing that's happening now is like there's sort of this maturity curve. Like, as businesses, let's just use the travel sector again as an example. There's been this evolution of maturity where Volaris let's just look at them. So they started with a bot, an outward facing bot. And I think a lot of businesses, it may have taken them a long time. Maybe they were an early adopter, everything in between. They started with the customer facing interface. How do I interface for customers that are trying to contact me? And it's very reactive. So it's when you reach out to me, I'm going to try and answer all the questions because I don't want to talk to you. That's like, so the conversational AI, whether it's voice or text, has gotten to a place of maturity, and people expect it to be good. The businesses that are not doing that yet are really falling behind, for sure. I think the two things I'm seeing is, number one, on the customer facing side, I'm seeing businesses get a lot more proactive. There's a lot more understanding of and kind of strategy around how we want to re-engage with customers. And I think bots and integrations do help there. So things like being able, I mean, like I'm just pulling this out of the air, but like being able to come back to you and say, "Hey, Amanda, you were just one step away from booking that flight yesterday. If you just tell us the time you want to leave on Saturday, we can give you an itinerary suggestion." So it's proactive. It's based on your past behavior. You were interacting, you answered a bunch of stuff, you got a phone call, you got distracted, you stopped. The ability to be proactive as a business is say, "Hey, we know you were trying to do something. Just give us this, and then we can answer your question." I think that's really cool. And most people are finding that level of personalization is valuable. It's not the text blast from some business you've never heard of that is telling you to buy something or do something. No one wants that. But the idea that it's a business that you've worked with or engaged with and it's trying to be more convenient is very cool. The other phenomenon I'm seeing is that's all customer facing. But I think the other piece is now, kind of the idea of what's happening internally when customers are interacting with the business. A lot of the energy is now focused inward. How do I help my employees, my customer service agents be better, do better, drive better CSAT, drive better sentiment, drive revenue, drive customer retention? It's no longer about like, how can I help you? And it's just about support or service. It's really, I'm a brand ambassador now. And the technology that companies are now investing in is really exciting. So one of the things Verint is doing, we launched this last year, our Copilot bots. Verint Copilot is really a collection of bots that help agents. So it can kind of like set the tone and set the stage. Like, let's say you get escalated to talk to somebody and I say, "Hi, Amanda, how can I help you?" I've already got, like, I know what your name is, if possible. Like, any contextual information I can give you as an agent to just get up to speed faster, that's great. Knowledge automation, I kind of explained that earlier, like being able to use just organizational knowledge to summarize things, but for the agent. So you're asking me a question, and I have a little thing that's just monitoring the conversation in real time that says, Amanda just asked you a question about return policy. Here's the return policy for umbrellas. I don't know. So being able to be that quick and that contextually relevant is very cool. So that's the thing I'm most excited about now. And I'm seeing is like the new wave of this is augmenting people in not just the contact center. I mean, obviously our business is very sales and service contact center oriented. So we're doing Copilot bots for those types of employees, but it goes beyond that. It's about people who are doing, broad analysis on a business, business intelligence, staff management, forecasting and scheduling of staff or, field force. And it's just that type of thing, that just tells you, hey, you had 3.1% attrition last week for people not showing up for their assigned scheduled slots. Here's a revised schedule that might work better for your team. Like, that kind of AI is super exciting, and people can ignore it. It's not like forcing them to do anything, but having that analysis that quick is pretty cool. So that's, I don't know if that makes sense, but I feel like this Copilot era that we're in now is pretty exciting.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of coming full circle and expanding into all processes in one way or another.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. Well, I want to thank you so much for coming on the show and sharing your insights with us today and how this technology is improving the travel industry.
Awesome. Well, thanks a lot. It was really fun to talk to you.
And thank you to our audience. Stay tuned. There's more podcasts like this coming up.